Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarakari. Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarakari. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare. Jayo Radha Radha Kantara Radha Kantara. Jayo Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai. Jayo Gaura Nitai. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayam Udiraye Ashtaprayeshu Abhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Raishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 20. Nasike Niravidyetam Doduyati Nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha
Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha Nasike niravidyetam Doduyati nabhasvati Tatra Vayur Gandavaho Krano Nasi Jigrikshataha.
Translation is given grace to Prabhu. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and the respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence. The controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested. Please repeat. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated.
The nostrils and respiration were then generated.
The nasal instruments,
Orders
came into existence.
The
controlling deity of air, carrying smell, also became manifested. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The nasal instrument ordered and controlling BT air, smelling, etc. all became manifested simultaneously when the Lord desired to smell. The Vedic mantras confirm this statement, the Upanishad statement, that everything is first designed by Supreme before the subordinate living entity can act upon it. The living entity can see only when the Lord sees. The living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. Independence is thinking. Is there by the grace of the Lord, but the thinking can be given shape by the grace of the Lord. Therefore, the common saying is that man proposes and God disposes. The whole explanation is in the subject of the absolute dependence of living entities and absolute independence of Supreme Lord. Less intelligent persons claiming to be one on an equal level with God must first prove themselves to be absolute and independent. And then they must substantiate the claim to becoming one with God. Arjuna Tatsat. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Shanakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamakyam Gadati Swapadantikam Nikam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Kipim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Kinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Vishwaram Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Namo Acharya Bhakti Kripapadaya Gaura Bhaktavandana Rakhyavapate Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhastakadishtarani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Vancha Kalpatarubhya Kripa Sindhya Patitana Bhavaraya Vaishnavya Namo Hare Krishna. So we continue to read from this chapter. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So as we discussed in 2 days back, so this chapter is very important because this is the beginning where the details of the entire Bhagavatam is all brought forth by Shukadeva Goswami in answer to Maharaj Parikshit. So Maharaj Parikshit in the previous chapter, he asked about how is the Virat Purusha manifested, what are their functionalities. And so in answer to those questions, so here we see Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami is answering to those questions. So first we saw the 10 subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we saw about the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, how he is manifesting in the Garbhodaka ocean. First he is entering into each and every universe. Then from him, the perspiration comes the Garbhodaka ocean. And from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu comes this Virat Purusha. So this is answering to the question by Maharaj Parikshit. So very nicely, whole sequence is being taken care by Shukadeva Goswami. He speaks about first Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and from him manifests the Virat Purusha. We should not confuse ourselves that whatever is being described here is about the Vishnu, Purusha form of the Lord. So Purusha form of the Lord is not something that is manifested over time. The Lord eternally manifests the 3 Purusha forms. So the material universe, as you might know, has 3 Purusha forms. So Karanodakshaya Vishnu is there in between the spiritual world and material world on the causal ocean or Karana ocean. And inside from the pores of the bodies of the Mahavishnu or Karanodakshaya Vishnu comes different universes. In each and every universe, the Lord manifests further as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And from him, perspiration comes the Garbhodakshaya ocean, and is lying on the ocean in the mystical sleep, transcendental yoga nidra. And while he is meditating on the process of creation, So he's thinking, why should he create? So he wants to create, as we have answered many times, he wants to create so that the living entities can get a chance to get a body, to be able to perceive things. And the hope of Lord, Supreme Lord, is that they perceive the truth. They perceive the truth of this material world being very fallible, very temporary and transient in nature, and the real truth is actually hidden behind the curtain of illusion, which is the Supreme Lord, as Mahavishnu, as the Paramatma in each and every atom of the universe. So his hope is that, just like we hear from Prabhu also quotes many times, Samana Vrikshne Purusho Nimagno. In the Upanishad it is said, in the Shvetashwara Upanishad, how the two birds are sitting. The one bird is watching, the other bird is going and eating the fruits. So the hope of the second bird, the Paramatma bird, is that when will this other bird stop eating fruits and instead look towards him? So that is the hope of the Supreme Lord. He creates this entire material manifestation, all the universes, all the 14 planetary systems, so that somehow or other the living entity stops looking at the ephemeral world that is presented in front of him, that is casted in front of him, but instead looks beyond that and looks to the truth that is beyond that, which is the Supreme Lord, hiding behind that. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita also in the Isha Upanishad, 17th shloka, it says that how Hiranmayena Patrena, there is an illusion which is very bright, which is very covering, which is hiding the Supreme Lord from the eyes of the normal living entities. So this entire Bhagavatam is giving us an opportunity to see the Lord first from the sound vibration. So we first hear the Lord through the sound vibration, we hear through our ears, actually we see through our ears. That is the correct process. The correct process of understanding the Lord is first seeing through our ears. How can one see through the ears? So by the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. By hearing the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, one hears very attentively, and the Lord is entering through one's ears. Karna Dharena, he enters through one's ears, goes into the heart and manifests as a lead in the heart. So that the whole process happens by constant attendance in the Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. So otherwise we will be confused. If somebody were to read this, so if the Lord, can he manifest his senses? Doesn't he have senses before? So he's manifesting the mouth, he's manifesting the nostrils. So how is that possible? So if we have everything incomplete, how can the Lord manifest one of this at a time? First we saw in the previous two verses, he manifested so what was the sense he manifested? Anybody? If they have listened to the previous verses. First he manifested the sound vibration, the mouth. So he manifested the sense object of speech. And then now he's manifesting the nostrils. But he also manifested the mouth has two functionalities to perform. What are the two functionalities to perform? Taste and speech. So taste and speech are first manifested. So is it the Lord who is manifesting this? I'm questioning. So who is manifesting this? I already gave the answer before. The Lord as a Virata Purusha.
Yeah.
It's not the Lord himself. So Virat Purusha is actually it's a costume that the Lord is wearing for the purpose of creation and maintenance. So it is not his original form. So Prabhupada mentions again and again, Virata Purusha, the universal form, is a temporary manifestation of the universal form. So it is not a permanent manifestation. As long as the universe is there, the Lord has to create, maintain and sustain. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya. So he manifests that, he makes it possible through the agent of the universal form. So just like and somebody, if you go to the Disney World, you will have somebody putting the costume of the Mickey Mouse and then making fun of the children. So that is not really that person. It's a costume. So similarly, the universal form is a costume that the Lord is wearing in order to do these functionalities of maintenance and creation. So that is why the universal form is very attractive to the materialist. Because the materialist, they see the universal form is all powerful And it is transcending the time, past, present, and future. And it has all the demigods in the same one frame. So it is so attractive for the materialist people because they don't have to worship separate demigod each time. They can worship one universal form, and all demigods are already there in that. So that is, Krishna is recommending the worship of the universal form for the materialist. Because the materialists, they cannot see Krishna as an object of love. They can only see God as an object of reverence and worship or reverence. So they cannot see beyond that. So they are in that mood. That's a mood they can appreciate. Just like the other Abrahamic religions, so the Christians and the Muslims, they can only revere God. They cannot go beyond that. So they can only revere God, or Almighty God. So they do not see beyond that. So for them, universal form, even the Hindus for that matter, universal form is very attractive for them because it gives everything in one picture. And that's actually recommended for materialists. Instead of worshipping each and every demigod separately, worship universal form that gives everything in one. And you're not doing avidhi purvakam, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that you're worshipping the demigods. It's avidhi purvakam, it is an indirect worship. So worshiping universal form is a direct worship. You give Krishna his central position, his preeminent position, and you also worship all the demigods separately. So it's actually a very good worship for the materialist. But those who really see, who know Krishna as he is, so they are not attracted by the universal form. That's what happened to Arjuna. So Arjuna wanted to desire to see the universal form of Krishna. And then Krishna said, are you sure you want to see the universal form? He asked him twice. And then he said, yes, I want to see that form of you in your manifested in this whole universe. How you are really doing this creation and maintenance and destruction, everything in one. Past, present and future, all in one. And all your deputed demigods who are all in one frame. So I want to see that form. So that universal form Krishna presented to Arjuna. And when Arjuna saw that, he was completely flabbergasted. So all his senses were becoming so intense that he cannot perceive the Lord in this all this panoramic version of everything in one sight. It was too much for him to even see. For Arjuna it is so difficult, so we'll talk about us. So it is almost impossible to perceive that. It is so ghastly also. See everybody, all Bhishma, Drona, everybody enter into the mouth of the universal form, getting crushed during the teeth of the god of death, Yama. So seeing all this is so ghastly. So if even we see ourselves also getting into that because we are not that pure. So it is going to be an overwhelming for any normal living entity to be able to perceive the universal form. It is out of question. That is not going to work. So instead, Arjuna himself said, "Oh my dear Lord, thank you very much for showing his universal form. Now will you please come to your beautiful two-handed Saumya Rupam." It says, beautiful form of you. I am more happy to see that, more content to see that. This universal form of you, hats off to you. Thank you very much. I don't want to see it again. Sorry. So that is what happened to Arjuna. So that was a special form. Krishna even says in the 11th chapter, this form I have never shown to anybody before. So,
didn't he also say I have to give you a special eyesight to see it?
yes, definitely. Because it's
You cannot see it from the normal eye.
Exactly. Yeah. So nobody can see the past, present, and future in one sight. So it requires a special divya drishti from given by the Supreme Lord. He has to enable somebody to see. So coming back to the beautiful form of Krishna. So Krishna did show the universal form at different times. Sometimes partial, sometimes full. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this form that I have shown you, Arjuna, nobody has seen this before. Neither the demigods or the rishis, nobody has seen this before. This is very unique. So that is said to be the complete universal form. And the entire 11th chapter talks about the glories of the universal form. But all other universal forms he has shown before. Like he has shown to Brahma, he is showing his universal form. How he is manifesting the entire thing. Because Brahma, he was meditating, he did not see all this happen manifest already. It was all happening before him. So he requested Krishna, please show me, how did you create this whole thing? So he's showing from Virat Purusha, I first manifested the Virat Purusha, and from then all these things are coming. So that is one universal form. And then we see another universal form shown to Bali Maharaj. So when Krishna was coming as Vamanadev, then he became the Trivikrama form, huge universal form, spanning the entire expanse of this creation. That was one universal form. We didn't see the demigods, everybody in that. It is one universal form. And the steady state universal form, or the universal form in which he exists all the time in this creation, is called Sensumara. That is described in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. How the Lord is existing in the universal form, all the planetary system is on him, and it's in the shape of a dolphin. That's that in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Coming back to this universal form, which actually describes the creation process, Virata Purusha. So Shukadeva Goswami is explaining how Brahma is seeing this, the Virata Purusha. So he first manifests all the senses. So before that, he already said that Krishna, he said in the 14th shloka, just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, all the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies. So first is Adi Adhyatmika, and that is Adi Devika, then there is Adi Bhava. So Adhyatmika is the senses. So first Krishna manifests the universal form, the Virata Purusha. He manifests just like in the previous verses, he manifested the sense of speech and the sense of tongue, which is able to eat foodstuffs. So these two things are the senses. And then comes the controlling deity of the senses. So the universal form, all the demigods are there. So Krishna, how he creates his demigods. So of course Brahma is also involved in the creation of the demigods. So he creates Kashyapa, and Kashyapa is one of the Prajapatis, and he creates with his wife Aditi, he creates demigods, the race of demons. Those things are happening. But in animated form, so the potency of the demigod is actually created by the Virata Purusha. And the potency is invested into the demigod after the real birth from the father and mother. Potency of this, the deity of the Vak Shakti, so came to the deity of Varuna. So Varuna got the taste. Taste came to Varuna. And the Vak Shakti is coming from the deity of Vayu. So that was also, that potency was created, Vayu was created, Varuna was created, and then in the nostrils, the deity of smell is created. I think it was explained here. Let's see. Controlling deity of hearing. Supreme Lord designed smell orders, nostrils, and respiration was generated, and as an instrument, orders came into existence. Controlling deity of air, carrying smell, also became manifested. So Vayu was also an instrumental for the smell. The controlling deity of smell, and also the breathing process. So two things are important. We use the nostrils for breathing and also for smelling. So without breathing also life cannot exist. So in this way, first Krishna, Virat Purusha, he manifests the senses. And then he manifests the controlling deity. And then it is placed onto the Adi Bhautika, or the body. And placed onto the body. These two things has to be pre-existent. It's a prerequisite to have the sense, and also a prerequisite to have the sense deity. So before the sense can be put on the body of a conditioned soul. Otherwise the conditioned soul cannot be able to perceive. It won't be able to work. So similarly, that's how he creates this whole thing. Virata Purusha he creates. This is all described further in the Rig Veda and the Yajur Veda. So the Purusha Sukta. The Purusha Sukta is a very popular hymn that is sung in praise of the Virata Purusha. So how he created the entire thing. So it is said that the Purusha Sukta, that the Purusha Avatar, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, is the one who actually manifests the Virat Purusha And then all these things are finally created. So I'd like to read certain parts of the Purusha Sukta so that you can understand this. Om Sahasra Sirisha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrabhat Sabhumim Vishwato Vitvayat Atya Dishtatashangulam. So Purusha has thousands of heads and thousands of eyes and thousands of feet. He has enveloped this entire world from all sides and has transcended this in 10 angulas or 10 inches. So it all happened from the Virat Purusha, who was just 10 inches in size, 10 angulam, Dasha angulam. So he was the size of a palm. And from that size, he manifested the Virat Purusha, in which he has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, and thousands of arms and legs. So that is the universal form that we should meditate upon. It says Purusha evedakam sarvam yat bhutam yat chabhavyam utam vrittatvasheshanaha yatanne ena tirohati. And this very Purusha, all that which existed in the past will come into being in the future, and also he is the Lord of immortality, that which grows profusely by food, also Purusha. So here is the one which talks about is coming from Purusha Avatar. So it further says that, the Purusha Avatar first separates this spiritual world, the material world from the spiritual world. The spiritual world is completely existing in a full expanse. So it is expanding wherever the Brahma Jyoti is there. As you might know, Lord is there as Krishna, and from his body comes his Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti is expanding into the entire expanse of the spiritual world. But it is blocked in only the material world. The material world has a cloud of designs. So that is blocking the Brahma Jyoti from entering into the material world. So that's where this Purusha Sukta is saying that Mahavishnu is lying, and Mahavishnu is separating the spiritual from the material world. And inside the material world is many, many universes. In one universe, all these things is happening. So then he goes on to explain how this deity of Agni is created, how the deity of Indra is created. And then he goes on to explain further the four Varnas are also created. Chaturvarnya Maya Srishtam Gunam Karma Vibhagasham. From the head comes Brahmanas, from the arms come the Kshatriyas, and from the belly comes the Vaishyas, from the Hara or the lotus feet comes the Shudras. So he manifests all these different deities and all the different Varnas, and then all the different sense objects also manifested. So we have these 5 senses. So which is the sense of touch, the sense of nostrils, and the sense of taste, the sense of eyes, and the sense of eyes, rasa, gandha, and eyes, the nostrils, the sense of speech, hearing is what I missed. So all the senses get manifested. Then it says sense objects are manifested. Sense objects, because what is the use of senses if we cannot perceive the sense objects? There has to be a good form, rupa, or rasa, which is the taste. Then gandha means smell, and like that, touch, skin. All of them are becoming manifested. Senses, the sense object, the sense controlling deities, and finally the whole body of Brahma is created. So Brahma is first created, and from Brahma has complete all his bodies with all the senses, and he is able to perceive, he is able to see things. So first created person is Brahma, and Brahma further creates his other demigods through the Prajapatis. This whole description is there in the Purusha Sukta. Very beautiful. So very important thing to understand here is, so Prabhupada mentions very beautifully, the living entity can see only if the Lord sees. The living entity can smell and the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. This will be very important thing to understand. So the senses is actually controlled by the deities. And the fact that we are able to perceive things through our senses is because it is being allowed by the deities. And that is very important to understand. So that's why this is very important to understand. We should always remember that we have a good side we're able to perceive things nicely, we're able to touch, we're able to listen, and we're able to smell. All these things is made possible by the grace of the Lord. So, Lord, unless He desires for us to be able to perceive all these things, it is not possible. So, as Mataji mentioned also, that Arjuna was able to perceive the three-folded form of the beautiful form of Krishna, and also was able to perceive the universal form, because the Lord gave him the person. Otherwise, you won't be able to see. Similarly, we should be thankful to Krishna every day that He is able to see, we are able to see even the Archa Vigraha form of the Lord. It's all because of the grace of Krishna. If not, we cannot even. The Archa Vigraha form of Krishna is a manifestation of Krishna, so that we can touch Him and we can feel Him. We can touch His lotus feet and we can massage His lotus feet. And we can use our eyes to see the beautiful form of Krishna, and we can use the sense of smell to smell the beautiful flowers offered to Krishna, tulsi leaf offered to Krishna, we can use for tasting. So all these things, the senses, should be used in the master of senses, Rishikena Sevana Bhakti Ruchate. So that is what is the real bhakti. So this is possible only in Bhakti Yoga. So in Bhakti Yoga, the worship of the deity is a very central aspect. So in all the different great devotees of the Lord in the past, we've seen all of them have worshipped the deity. Like Ramanuja is connected with so many deities like Srirangam and Melkote, so many different temples connected. Madhvacharya, he found that the beautiful Udupi Krishna. So it was actually, you might know that story, so that there was a big merchant who was carrying a lot of salt on the ocean. And inside the salt was buried, this deity was buried. So he was carrying the merchant was carrying the ship, and the ship got capsized in the ocean. So it was almost very close to the shore. So he was crying for help. Somebody please help. So Madhvacharya was meditating at the time, and then he saw that the ship was capsized. So he just waved his cloth, and then the ship was released from the capsize. And then the merchant somehow was managed to come ashore. And the merchant understood that this was because of the grace of this great saint that I was released from this situation. So he came to Sage Madhva, and then he asked, you helped me out of this situation, what can I do for you? So he said, so there must be a big salt that you must be having. So you just give me inside the salt, to break down the salt hill, the mound of salt, then you will have a deity inside. I just want the deity. So then he could not, so he had almost 100 people to bring the whole mound of salt. It was so heavy actually. And then when it was brought in front of Madhvacharya, so he just put his hand on it, put his fist on it. It broke open and revealed the beautiful form of Krishna. So like that, the deity form of the Lord is worshipped by all great acharyas in the past. So it is not something that is an imaginative. So that's why Prabhupada also institutionalized the worship of the deity in our movement. Because worship of deity is very central to the Bhakti Yoga. So because it helps us to engage our senses. Otherwise, how would we engage our senses in the Lord's worship? So we can read Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says reading Bhagavad Gita is worshipping Him with His intelligence. How do we use our intelligence in Lord's worship? Through reading Bhagavad Gita. And how do we use our sense of hearing? By reading Bhagavad. But what about the sense of seeing? And what about the sense of tasting? And sense of smelling? There is no way to engage these senses. So how can you just, we cannot even offer some food and then pray to somebody. Oh Krishna, you take it. So we need a deity. The deity is different from a statue. Because we invite the Lord to come and stay in the deity. So there's a whole process of deity installation. It's called Prana Pratishtha. So the idol is brought. The idol is bathed and it is cleaned very nicely. And after that, there's a whole process of how it is invoked. The Lord is invoked to come and stay in the deity form. It's called Prana Pratishtha ceremony. And it is done very elaborately. and it is established, the Lord is welcome to reside in the deity, and that's when the idol becomes a deity. Otherwise, what is the difference between idol and deity? So people accuse the followers of Vedas idol worshippers, but actually we are not worshipping idols, we are worshipping the deities. So the deity is installed, just like there's a process of creation. The Virat Purusha is creating one after another, stage after stage, face after face. The same way, the Lord is invited to come into the deity form, the proper ceremony. So the most important thing being and invoking presence of the holy name in Kaliuga especially. Holy name is the best way. The holy name Krishna is definitely present in the holy name. But we are so unfortunate that we cannot perceive the holy name. The potency of the holy name is not manifested to us because we don't fully trust in it. We don't fully have faith in it. Because Krishna says that Nama Nabhino Abhinna. So there's no difference between Krishna's name and Krishna's form, Krishna deity. There's no difference. But we are not so advanced enough to be able to perceive and have full faith in the name of Krishna. So Krishna also presents in the Ancha Vigraha form so that we can worship him. We can use our physical effort to build a temple for him, and we can use our efforts to make a nice food offerings for him. So that we can always be conscious that we are not doing for ourselves. Otherwise we can, for the name's sake, we can cook something and we can imagine, oh, I'm cooking for Krishna. But that is not an absolute process, because we are internally desiring to eat the food ourselves. So we are not in a pure stage. But when there's a deity form, and because we can relate with people, and we relate with deity form, then we know the deity is there. The deity is the master of the whole thing situation. He is the Lord of all lords. He is the center of the whole temple, of the house. And then we cook with that intention, cook with that consciousness. Deity is the enjoyer, we are not the enjoyer. Then that's when it becomes properly sanctified. First thing is the deity should be established properly. Number one, the pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada has established the deity form, and he's institutionalized the deity worship in ISKCON, and we properly install the deity, and then we follow the codes of conduct of the Bhakti Yoga. How to cook for the deity. There is a certain level of cleanness to be followed. The dishes have to be washed properly, and one should be in a good consciousness. One should have taken a bath before we enter the kitchen and start cooking. And all these rules are institutionalized so that we can be in the proper consciousness. So when you do it as proper consciousness, then the offering becomes qualified to be offered to the deity. Then the deity partakes when we properly offer the proper upacharas and mantras, everything. Then Krishna accepts that food. Of course, he can use any sense for doing any activity. So every sense of the Lord can do the work of other senses. So just by seeing, the Lord can accept the food stuff. But I also mentioned a story of how a small boy, he wanted to see Krishna deity come and eat personally. Krishna came and ate personally just to satisfy the deity, the devotee. So like that, Krishna also can do that. So the deity of Krishna has walked many miles all the way from Vrindavan to Katak, Sakshigopa. And deity of Krishna has spoken. And deity of Krishna can also eat food. We can't eat food. So all those things are proven. It's a story to instill faith in us. The deity is there, and deity is meant for accepting our service. All the stories, especially Chaitanya Charitamrita, is talking about these stories, so that we can be proper consciousness. We can cook for the deities, we can offer for the deities, and not make it a whole thing as a farce. So this is very important to do this. So this, to summarize, Virata Rupa is for our understanding of how the process of creation happens, how the Lord manifested this entire universe. Although being as a Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he's just lying there, but the whole manifestation is also there, and that comes from the Virat Purusha. So with this, I would like to stop here for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much. We know some of these things, but we need to be exposed to otherwise it becomes mechanical like this, as Mataji was saying in their class. So it's very good to repeat all these things. I have several, as my balloon brain can remember only one or two. Didn't Krishna show, or try to show, his universal form to Suryadeva also? When he was trying to tell him or teach him about Bhagavad Gita. Didn't he try one time with him?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe
I
you
want
find
to-
out.
yeah.
I thought he did. There are
Yeah,
several
definitely
of them.
Krishna
One of
spoke.
them was sun god, Suryadeva, I think. I'm not sure. That's one thing. Another thing also, Krishna says that he is the taste and smell and different things. You just now said Vayu is in charge of the smell. Who is in charge as a deity for taste?
Taste is Varuna.
Who?
Varuna or the
Varuna also.
water god.
Varuna. The smell is Vayu.
Vayu.
Okay. I did not know that. I thought it was Krishna, but now I do.
Well,
But he's
everything
water.
is Krishna.
Huh?
He said, did you say Krishna?
Yeah, Krishna, it says that. I'm the taste of water.
They're his agents.
Yeah, but I didn't know there's a deity over there.
Yeah.
Varuna, he said.
Like Krishna's in charge of all of the temples, but he has temple presidents.
Oh, sounds good. Good to know.
Yeah, the potency is first manifested. Potency is invested into that demigod. So if the demigod is removed of the potency, he has no power. So many times it has happened. So Indra trying to, of course Indra, that is one thing in Bhagavatam. But Indra was also cursed to, he lost his potency, all the potencies. He could not exercise his potency. So he became so powerless. So the potency is invested by Krishna on the specific demigod. As long as the potency is invested, they can exercise the powers. And they exercise the dominion over us. So we are able to perceive the use of senses because the demigods are also letting us do it. But ultimately it is Paramatma. And that we can understand the universal form. So universal form, Krishna is the center, and everybody is around him. All the demigods are around him. So they are not the center. Krishna is the center.
Yes, because even like Brahma, he had to have a special power to even get the knowledge
Yes.
for creation.
Very true.
So it's just not real important. I mean, it's just that when Arjuna asked to see the Tulam form, that wouldn't necessarily mean that all the other warriors were seeing the Tulam form, because he wasn't in Vrindavan, or is there some dispensation at that time when because it says like when Krishna was going into the wrestling arena, everyone was seeing him according to their relationship with, the wrestler saw him as that. Another woman was seeing him as an innocent little boy who needed help, or a child, and so on. So Arjuna is seeing him as two-handed, but they're not in Vrindavan. He's outside of Vrindavan, so it would seem to me that it would be in his forum. It's not really necessarily a major philosophical point, but I was just curious about that.
Can you phrase the question in one sentence?
In other words, Arjuna is seeing a Tuam form, but the rest of the warriors are seeing a forum form.
Yeah, everybody is seeing a two-handed form, Krishna.
Everybody's seeing the Tuam. Annabelle proves it.
Yes.
Even though
Krishna was in the human light body.
but when he's outside of Vrindavan, he's always in his forum.
400 form.
Yeah.
No. That's only manifested for not always.
In other words,
So everybody thought him to be he didn't show himself as God at all times. Only in certain times he manifested 400 form. Actually Krishna, the universal form, from that he became a 400 form.
right.
And then he
Then
became a
he went
200
to-
form. So that shows the 400 form is the source of all these things. Vishnu, Purusharthas, the source of the universal form. So the two-handed form is how Krishna was there on the earth planet. So
But I was
he was seen as a normal human being.
But I was under the impression that, when he's in Vrindavan, that's the original personality of Godhead. when he goes into the other pastimes, like in Mathura and Dwarka, he's, engaging in other, he's not a cowherd boy, he's acting in a princely order. And and he's getting married and so on and so forth. We always see in the paintings that he's a two-armed form, but he's, my understanding was that he's not actually Govinda in those places. He's like an expansion of Govinda.
That is coming from the Acharya's commentary. The point that we are trying to mention is the Krishna does not manifest all the mellows. As Krishna in the Vrindavan, he manifests all the mellows, all the rasas.
Yeah.
Whereas when he goes out of Vrindavan, so because Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, that's the point they want to emphasize. Krishna manifests all the mellows when he's in Vrindavan. When he goes out of the Vrindavan, then it is actually the Vishnu. So he does not manifest certain mellows. So he only manifests Shantarasa or Dasya Rasa,
Right.
or at the most Sakya Rasa, not more than that. So the higher.
So therefore, that could be Vishnu. He's not in two-armed form.
It's Vishnu in two-handed form. He still
Vishnu
has
in
two-handed
two-handed
form.
form. Okay.
He still shows in two-handed forms. Because he doesn't want everybody to know him as God.
Right.
If he is manifested as four-handed form,
Yeah.
then the demons would oppose him. The demons would probably take in, knowing him to be not an ordinary person, they would not. Or even Duryodhana for that matter. He even saw the Vishwarupa, but he still was kind of convinced that that's some magic or something, and he can deal with it. So he definitely had two-handed form.
Yeah, because in all of our paintings, that's the way he is. And I've always thought, well, that's just for the sake of, the public. But, that's an interesting point, that even though he's in the two-handed form, he's actually Vishnu. He's not actually the original personality of God.
Correct. So it's Vishnu
Because
form.
but even though, even his wives, they're not, it is a conjugal relationship, but it's not the same as the gopis done. It's with awe and reverence. Everything is mixed with awe and reverence.
That's correct. So, but there's no difference between Vishnu and Krishna. It's the same person.
No, I know. I realize that.
Sorry, so you say that the form of Krishna and Golok in Gokul Vrindavan is form of Krishna?
No,
No.
two-handed.
It's two-hand Krishna.
Right.
But you're saying is Vishnu in Gokul Vrindavan.
The whole
No.
Rajabhumi.
No.
Whole of Rajabhumi.
Rajabhumi.
Rajabhumi is
In the material plane.
so many kroshas, it's about so many
But when
areas.
it leaves,
It comes out of that,
Okay.
so it's a Vishnu.
it's a Vishnu form in a two-armed form.
Two-armed, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Krishna in
Yes,
Golok
he has that.
and we talk about Gokul. Is that a form of Krishna that comes from Vishnu?
It's the same
or
Krishna,
it's a direct
same Krishna.
from
Gokul is another place where he was
Gokul
brought up.
Yes.
Goloka is a spiritual word.
Yes.
Gokul is an
So
earthly
it's the
planet.
same Krishna. It's not a manifestation from
In
Vishnu.
in this kalpa,
Yeah.
this 4 yugas, it's original Krishna coming.
Right.
But usually it's the incarnation of Narayana, Mahavishnu.
Okay. Yes.
So Vishnu incarnates as Krishna, and then he does certain pastimes, but not so elaborately like Rasa Leela and so many things. But just some pastimes, he kills all the demons. That happens every time, and then he goes to Mathura. That's it. But the Rasa Leela, everything, all those details doesn't happen. That only happens when Krishna comes from Guru.
That's the time that you
And that's the unique, that's the significance of this moment in time. That only now, at this part of this vast day of Brahma, which is 4 billion years or something, this particular moment, the original form of Krishna is coming. And Lord Chaitanya is not a Vishnu form, he's actually a combination of Radha and Krishna, the most intimate, munificent incarnation of the Lord. This is the most rare and the greatest opportunity for any soul, jiva, to have this opportunity at this moment. If we can only cultivate that appreciation, our lives will be different. Remind me, maybe you'll see.
A couple of things. That's what Srila Prabhupada said, for us to dress Radha Krishna in the reverence of Laxmi Narayan, of the opulence, give him all these nice things. And then, here's my confusion right now. There is this universal form. I mean, the universal form is like all these different things that Arjuna saw, right? Now, there are several places where Krishna has exhibited. One is universal, the other one is like he grows into such this huge big thing, but not with all this head. What is that form called?
It's also called universal form.
But that is also universal without all this, because he did explicit that in an assembly where the Sudarshan Chakra was running after Shishupal. Remember, it happened in an assembly, and he tolerated, and then after that he grew into this universal form. So there's some others that
that's in the Hastinapura. So
yeah.
when,
Didn't he do that?
Duryodhana wanted to capture Krishna and make him imprison him. That time Krishna manifested a partial.
But with Shishupal also he did that. That was in an
Shishupal
assembly.
was killed.
This is some Shastra.
Yeah, but didn't he expand before he
No.
did that? He just did it like that.
Yeah,
I thought it was an assembly, and then I think
It was an assembly after the Rajasvi Yajna of Vishnu Maharaj. Everybody was given their due credits. They were giving. But Shishupal, everybody was glorifying Krishna, starting from Vishnu Maharaj. But Shishupal came there and he was could not hear all the glories of Krishna because he was full of envy.
right.
And so he was completely despising him, and he was calling him different names. And he waited for 108 offences. So he said he has given and promised to his aunt that will tolerate 100 offences.
Yes, I know the story, but the point I'm making is that Krishna doesn't have this, only Vishnu does. So for this reason, he expanded or turned into something. He didn't through, Krishna didn't send Sudarshan. Did he?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
He had it in his hand? And I thought he turned into Vishnu before he sent it.
No, he did not turn into Vishnu. When he wants, he manifests
In Krishna?
on his two-handed form itself.
Yeah, which I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only
It's not a
Krishna.
protocol for him that he has to do all the steps. First
Yeah.
become Vishnu, then get him, then the Nrishimhadeva chakra, then send him. It's not necessary. If you only
Is there any other things like that he did?
And many times in the Krishna pastimes, he just even brought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he called for Nrishimhadeva chakra. So it's not difficult for him. He doesn't have to become Vishnu.
Sounds more.
Who was Jagannath was one of them was Shishupal.
Maybe you know the Sanskrit word, but the description says that in his medium-sized form, everything is comprised inside Krishna. So in everything that we can't even conceive is in his two-hand form. So his everything is within him, but he's independent of everything. So whenever he wishes and desires, he can do as he pleases. I just forget the Sanskrit.
It's not a constraint of space and time that he absolutely has to be within Krishna. Krishna is there in every atom. So it is wrong to imagine that everything is within him. So he's everything and he's at the same time one person.
Yes.
So that is the amazing part of it.
Yes.
He is simultaneously a two-handed form Krishna, but he's simultaneously there in every atom of the creation, and he's also there as universal form, and also there as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, also there as Mahavishnu, also there as spiritual world as the Goloka Krishna. That is his potency. He's simultaneously there, Achintya Veda Veda. Simultaneously he's the same person, and simultaneously he is different also. Different in the sense he's still the same person but manifests different qualities. Just like Vishnu and Krishna are not different. But just like you have a white light and you put a filter in front of it, a green filter, then you see green light. So like that, Vishnu manifests only certain qualities of Vishnu. Whereas Krishna manifests all qualities. There is no difference between them. It is wrong to say Krishna and Vishnu are different. But simultaneously they are different also because they manifest different qualities at the same time. So, yeah. You had any
Good.
questions?
Clear out doubts. My doubts.
Nice explanation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
bless me that at least